Okay, we have come out of executive sessions. No decisions or votes have been made, and we were adjourned the executive session. Now, the next meeting, welcome everybody. This is May 22nd, 2018. I like to say it's 5:45, but it's 5:52, give or take. This is City Council public hearing. I'd like to call this meeting to order and acknowledge that both the press and the public were duly notified of the hearing in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The purpose, Ordinance 2018-06, an ordinance to raise revenue and adopt a budget for the City of Isle Palm, South Carolina for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019. I'm going to ask Administrator Tucker to help us do this.
Okay, I'll give everybody just a few minutes to get in and get seated. I think they must have brought a bus. This is great.
We're glad to see everybody here.
That's right. Super to have an audience. So I am going to review the FY19 budget. I'm going to hit the highlights of the FY19 budget. Do you guys hear me?
Not through the mic, Linda.
You're on.
Okay.
Mics are on. Test, 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 test.
It's low.
Okay.
I'll talk really loudly. Okay, hopefully you all will be able to hear me. This is the, we refer to this as the gray budget. This is the budget that was advertised announcing this public hearing. So I'm going to confine my comments to the gray budget, but then at the end of my comments, I'm going to talk about some things that I have an expectation may happen to this budget and amendments that council may consider before adopting the final budget. So I will review the numbers that are in here, and then at the end of this, I will talk about additional increases and decreases that may be made before the budget is adopted. First of all, I want to congratulate this City Council. This is their first budget that they've worked on, and so they've worked very hard, most especially the new chair of Ways and Means, Jimmy Ward. I am presenting you a balanced general fund budget, which is required by law to be balanced. That is, expenditures and revenues equal one another. And also, probably the most important thing that I can say tonight is this budget contemplates no tax increase. So I'll emphasize that again. This budget contemplates no tax increase. So I thought that might clear the room, but it didn't. Okay, so on the revenue side, this budget, the gray budget, anticipates that revenues will be stable or only slightly increasing. The general fund revenues will go up by about 2.5%. The tourism revenues are stable or only slightly increasing. There is a provision globally throughout the budget for a cost of living increase of 2.2% and also a pool for the merit at about 2%. So that permeates through the entire general fund budget. Over the last, I don't know, about 6 years now, I guess, the city has had a practice of reserving fund balance for the very expensive items that might be coming up in the future. So when we do our 10-year capital plan and we look at, oh, we're going to have to buy a $1 million fire truck in year 5, then what the city has been doing is doing reservations of fund balance, or in your terms, a savings account, each year to save that money. So those things that are in the gray budget, that are things that we're saving money for, are $60,000, roughly $61,000 for self-contained breathing apparatus. There is a $500,000 provision this year towards fire department new rolling stock. There is $100,000 in savings for garbage packers and loaders. And there's also money, $75,000, to replace the infrastructure on Ocean Boulevard between 10th and 14th Avenue. And lastly, the most recent addition is $150,000 into a fund for future marina maintenance. So then the other thing that the gray budget has each year, they're usually projects that we start and are unable to conclude before the budget year's out. So there's a roll over into the next budget year. And so there are 4 of those that were budgeted in FY18 that we will finish in FY19. There's $1.5 million that's work currently under construction for Phase 2 drainage. There's underground storage tank replacement. Those are contracts that have already been awarded that we will not pay out 100% of until FY19. That is $620,000 at the marina and $280,000 over at the public works site. We are required by law to replace those tanks, so it's not an option. There's the completion of the purchase of a replacement of the 75-foot ladder truck in the fire department, and then about $1 million worth of building improvements, maintenance type improvements that were identified by the Hill Buildings Condition Assessment. The majority of those are at the public safety building. Then there are new initiatives that mostly have come out of the visioning meetings. Some of you probably participated in a series of meetings at the first of the year where the citizens came together and told council what they thought they could do for their city, and then also the citizens told council what they felt like should be done for them. So the first thing was parking and traffic management. So there's $50,000 in the FY19 budget to go towards making parking year-round. It also will contemplate parallel parking on Palm Boulevard and also no trailer parking on Waterway Boulevard. There's $400,000. Drainage was a big issue in those meetings. There's $400,000 identified for engineering, design, and permitting for 3 of the major outfalls: 30th Avenue, 36th Avenue, and 41st Avenue. So this is the preliminary work to actual construction, which is very expensive because of the expense of permitting. There is the addition of 1 new position in the Public Works Department. That person would be an assistant director, and they will help with these drainage improvements and also the building condition assessment improvements. And then we also heard during those, you can take that bulb out if you want to, Roger.
It's just winding all of us.
Sorry. Also during the during those meetings, the visioning meetings, there was a lot of discussion about the need to expand sewer service on the island. Only about 1/3 of the island has sewer service, and every time we've had flooded conditions, we have had problems with septic tanks and problems dealing with contaminated rainwater that has accumulated on the streets. So there's money identified for a cooperative endeavor with the Isle of Palms Water and Sewer Commission to basically fund this $50,000 to fund a study that would look at what it would take to sewer the entire island, and then mechanisms, what that price tag would be, and then hopefully mechanisms that could be put in place that would allow for funding of that. And the goal would be to try to accomplish that task under a voluntary scenario rather than a mandatory scenario. So that's on the horizon there, and some money set aside for that. Also from the visioning, we heard that the city should be doing more related to coyote management. So there's $10,000 more in the budget than there was in FY18 to do coyote management. There's been $35,000 identified for engineering assistance in order to determine how to phase the rehabilitation of the marina docks, which, as you all know, the docks are in very poor condition, and the city is going to need to tackle replacement of those docks or rehabilitation of them. And then there's $60,000 in the gray budget identified for the purpose of painting the bulkhead. Then some other things that were not necessarily discussed in the visioning meeting, but are things that need to be taken care of with the city. There's $1,200 so that any of you who want to go to the fall farmers market and you want to park at the county park site will be able to do that at no charge, because we're going to fund covering that in the FY19 budget. So that's good news, for more parking good news, and more farmers market good news too. There's $62,000 identified to rehabilitate the gym floor at the rec center. That is going to be offset by a $13,000 grant. There is $68,000 identified to redo the tennis courts. And also coming out of visioning, there is $10,000 that will go towards paying part-time help to keep the rec center open on Sunday. So for those of you who have had an interest in using the rec center on Sunday, we are going to fund some people to be there to be able to keep it open. There will be an increase in fees for some of the recreation activities. It's been a long time since any of the fees at the rec center have been increased, but the Recreation Committee and Ways and Means and City Council felt that should happen. There will be a $25 non-resident fee increase for youth athletics, and then Camp Summershine rates will go up to $85,000 would be a real, that'd be a real camp, wouldn't it? $85 for residents and $110 for non-residents for Camp Summershine. There's $24,000 identified in the budget for a professional search firm to assist the city with some professional searches for some of the higher level employees that are going to be replaced in FY19. There's $25,000 identified for design and engineering for improvements to the multi-use path on Waterway Boulevard. Most of you know that that path is nice, but it is substandard, and it's hoped to do some engineering design work towards improving it. There's $40,000 identified to replace more sections of the white fencing at the front beach. And then we have several contracts for services throughout the city that will end in FY18 and will be renewed to possibly new contractors in FY19. So there's a little bit of a cushion for the fact that those contracts may then be more expensive. These are things like picking up recycling on the beach, trash on the beach, trash at the front beach, and taking care of our public restrooms at the front beach. So those contracts. And then there is $5,000 identified to pay half the cost. We're hoping there might be others in this room that will help us with the other half of the cost. I won't say who. To put a camera at Palm and 41st Avenue. As you know, we have traffic cams that are right here at the connector bridge on both sides of the bridge, and those assist citizens as well as ourselves, our police department, with knowing whether or not we need to have additional personnel out there doing traffic management. And so it's thought that it might be helpful to have an additional camera at 41st and Palm, because as you all know, sometimes that traffic can get backed up significantly. So that is everything that is in the FY19 gray budget. So now I have a sheet of paper that are those kinds of things that have come up since this budget was developed and since it was advertised. Some of these will be decreases to the budget. Some of them will be increases to the budget. So if you'll just bear with me to go through those things. Council has this same list, and when we get to that place on the budget, there will likely be a motion for second reading, and a second to that, then a motion to amend, and some of these things on this list may be included in that amendment. If the amendment passes, then the budget would pass as amended with these items in there. So I want to make sure that I carefully review all of these. None of these affect the general fund budget being balanced. None of these would affect any kind of property tax increase or decrease. But I do want to review them for you. Charleston County has notified us that they're going to send us more money in FY19 than they did in FY18. So we will add $73,000 on the revenue side, so that's good news. City Council has decided that to fund the 75-foot ladder truck, rather than taking that money out of savings that they feel they may need for other things, they want to do a municipal lease, which is an equivalent of a loan, not a lease. So we will have lease proceeds and then a corresponding expense for the fire truck. So we'll have lease revenues in and then expense for the fire truck out and payments on the lease. That's $200,000 for FY19, both ways. The city is in receipt and has been awarded a boating infrastructure grant. This grant will replace the fuel docks at the marina and the associated appurtenances there. So we have to budget for that grant income, but as most grants do, it requires a match. So we also have 100% of the expense to do that project identified in this menu of other items, and so there will be an offsetting grant revenue to that expense. The expense is $138,934. Then we're having to rebudget things that when we did the gray budget, we thought we were going to consummate before the year was out, but as it turns out, we won't, and that is the garbage packer and the garbage flatbed truck. Both of those vehicles for Public Works were ordered in January of 2018. They will not come in until 2019. So the money is there, we have saved for them, it's ready to be spent, but we won't spend it until FY19. So we have got to put that in the amended budget. That is $203,000 and $106,000 respectively. Then we have $25,000. The Ford Taurus sedans that we normally use for police vehicles are no longer going to be made. We wish to replace those vehicles that were scheduled to be replaced on our 6-year rotation with SUVs. The SUVs, as you know, we have some in our fleet already. They serve us better than the sedans do in the police fleet over here because they're often required to go into difficult circumstances like flooding and also often required to go onto the beach. So that's going to add $25,000 to our budget now that the Tauruses are not available and we're going to go to the SUVs in the police department. Our estimates to paint the bulkhead that we had included in the gray budget, which, as you know, I think I mentioned $60,000 that we had in there. Well, those estimates were off, we have learned, and so to paint the bulkhead at the marina, what we're going to need is another $116,000, which would include the engineering and oversight associated with painting the bulkhead and also painting. So the actual expense is the combination of the 116 and the 60,000. We've also learned that the expense identified for the personnel searches, we had in this budget, I believe it was $24,000 if my memory serves me correctly. It's going to take closer to $75,000 to do 3 searches, and so we have added another $51,000, or will, if it's the will of council, to the budget. We have suggested to council that we could reduce the expense for replacing dune walkovers, so we're anticipating reducing that expense to $125,000. As you know, we have just completed a major walkover at the front beach, and so we think we can delay replacing some of the others, so we will reduce that expense by $125,000. We also had budgeted in the gray budget $250,000 to do post-storm sand scraping. Because that is often an expense that is reimbursable by FEMA, we've decided to remove that from the budget. Be a little bit of a gamble that if we need to do that, it would be during a named storm situation, which has been the case the last 2 times that we've done it. So we'll reduce that in the budget by $250,000. On the building maintenance activities, over at the Public Works Department, we think we can do a little bit less than we had originally planned, so we're going to reduce those efforts by $100,000. This menu includes the possibility of doing some financial forensics on the 4 marina tenants to have some further documentation that the city is receiving all of the revenues that it is supposed to receive from those 4 tenants. That's $50,000 identified. We've got some training that we would like to send some additional personnel to, so that would add $1,600 to the budget. We had $15,000 in the budget identified for FY19 to replace the server at City Hall. Our server did not cooperate, and it was on its last leg the other day, and our systems were down, and so we have had to go ahead in this year that we're in now and replace the server, so we'll be able to take that expense out of FY19. We also, at the last Ways and Means meeting, Council added $250,000 to the budget to make marina dock repairs and improvements. And we will also be able to delete an item that we've been carrying on our budget for a long time, that is $15,000. And last year, the city purchased a service. Many of you may have gotten letters in the mail, if you're citizens that live over here, saying that the city had purchased a service called Air Med Service. You were probably told that you had a certain level of service, and if you wanted to purchase more, you could. And we have no idea how many people did, but the recommendation is being made to eliminate that roughly $18,000 from the FY19 budget. As far as we know, no one received the benefit of that service last year. And just to reassure you all out there, this does not mean that the helicopter service doesn't come if you need it. It does not mean that our fire department and EMS does not summon them. It just means that the city will no longer be paying for this sort of added protection. Most everyone would file a claim on their insurance, or if this was some sort of injury situation where there was liability. So those expenses would be covered. This was basically gap expenses, which there was just really no way for us to follow up and know whether or not any citizen saw the benefit of that $18,000 expense. And last year, I think only the company benefited that got the $18,000. So that's everything that I have, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Chairman. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, then...
Just if you would remind them that the total increases in the gray budget for revenues is $342,000, and the net increase in expenditures is $109,000. So it was a tough year, but we ended up going the right way, I think.
Correct.
It was a tough year.
Another question. Do you want to comment on the beach revegetation incentive program?
Sure. So what Councilmember Kinghorn is referring to, after we finish the beach restoration project, part of our funding in that has to do with doing plantings in that area, and that was, that particular project, and we will be doing plantings with funds that were set aside in the beach restoration funds in that project area. However, the council has embraced the idea that the city would set up a reimbursable type of scenario where if citizens are interested in doing plantings or sand fencing, or people who live, immediately adjacent to the beach, that we would do it on a cost share basis, like a 50-50 cost share, rather than that expense being 100% borne by residents who abut the beach. So that will be an FY19 initiative, a little bit different from anything that the city has done in the past. We have gotten some grants in the past, but this would be money that's budgeted.
Thank you very much, and the best news is no tax increase. Right. All right, that ends our special public hearing on the budget. Thank y'all, and we're going to jump right into our next program. I'd like to say it's 6 o'clock, but it's 6:15. Welcome one and all to City Council. Today is May 22nd, 2018. I'd like to notify that both the press and the public were duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. And again, welcome. It's nice to see everybody here. First order of business is feel free to join me as I say a prayer, to be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance and then our roll call. Dear wise and loving Father, thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for our health, and for the island we all call home. As we enter into this, our busy summer season, we ask that you look over our residents, our city employees, and our visitors, and those who are both here and afar to protect us. We ask for your wisdom to govern our island, to work together in making wise choices that affect both our island and our residents for now and for the future generations. We ask that as we enter into the 2018 hurricane season, that not only our island but all communities be spared of any devastation. It is in your name and blessed name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Marie? Thank you. Roll call.
Councilmember Bell.
Here.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Here.
Councilmember Ferenz.
Here.
Councilmember Kinghorn.
Here?
Councilmember Moy.
Here.
Councilmember Rice.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Mayor Carroll.
Here.
Administrator Tucker.
Here.
And Attorney Halverson.
Here.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next order of business is a fun one where we get to induct a new city employee. Nicole? If you come forward.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Nicole Chaplow as new firefighter for the city of Isle of Palms.
Second.
Second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Left hand on the Bible, right hand up. I, Nicole Chapeau,
I, Nicole Shepard,
do solemnly swear that I am duly qualified,
do solemnly swear that I am duly qualified,
according to the ordinance of the city of Isle of Palms,
according to the ordinance of the city of Isle of Palms,
to perform the duties of the position to which I have been selected,
to perform the duties of the position for which I have been selected,
and that I will, to the best of my abilities,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof, so help me God.
discharge the duties thereof, so help me God.
Welcome aboard. Nicole has an associate degree in fire science from New Hampshire Community Technical College. She has 19 years experience in fire service and 5 years in law enforcement. Nicole moved to South Carolina from her home state of Vermont in 2013 and now lives in North Charleston with her boyfriend Don and their 2 dogs, Chief and Jenna. They both enjoy working out and being outside. Welcome aboard Isle of Palms. Thank you very much. Number 3, reading the journal of previous meetings. Regular meeting of April 24th, 2018. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Citizens' comments. And before we get started, I'm going to ask Douglas to come up and kind of give us a little background. Of the Wild Dunes in development.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. As he's mentioned, I'll give just a little bit of some background information about the Wild Dunes plan development, kind of how that's evolved over time, and specifically how that would impact the development being proposed by Wild Dunes of a new inn, and give some guidance on how the city views requests like this, kind of historically and currently. The Wild Dunes development really started in 1975. The developers came to the city and they came to an agreement to create the Beach and Racquet Club PRD, Planned Residential Development. And that was done by the Sea Pines Company. And at that time, and it's been said that it's the first planned development in the state. I don't know that for certain, but that's routinely said that it's the first planned development. They're now called PUDs, PDD, or PRD, but it's really an agreement that the city makes with a developer, and it's generally done in exchange for some flexibility and in return for something for the city. So it's still a tool used today, but this one happens to be a very old one, and I think I do think it's served the city well. And it wouldn't be done exactly this way today, but it's generally kind of still a standard that is used and a tool that's used today. I would say that in the document is 120 pages roughly, and it's a lot of it is very kind of conceptual in nature. There's not a lot of steadfast rules in it. It speaks of things about what the aesthetics of the resort would be like, what the amenities should include, things of that nature. So it's generally broad in its language. However, there are a handful of specific requirements that are included in that document, and the city still enforces that as the zoning for that district. An example of some of those that will impact this development, the document establishes a maximum number of dwellings that can ever be developed in Wild Dunes. It also establishes a maximum number of inn units that can ever be developed. Currently, and as we're talking about a hotel, I'll just give you the detail that right now there are 147 inn units built. The allotment in the PRD is up to 350 can be built, so they still have 203 remaining inn units now, and once they build the 150, that'll get down to about 50 or so that they would still be entitled to. Another specific requirement in the code is the number of stories that can be built. The language in the PRD is different than the language outside of the PRD, and it says specifically that the maximum limit is 5 stories, but that it includes exclusions, that you do not count the ground floors used exclusively for parking. That's an exclusion from the 5 stories. You also don't count a top floor that has an area of less than 1/3 of the ground floor. So it specifically kind of excludes what I would call 2 floors, and allows what I would call a 7-story building, but it calls it a 5-story building plus those 2 exclusions. Also includes a maximum height of the building. The limit in the ordinance in the PRD language is 80 feet. Again, it's not calculated as it is outside of the Wild Dunes. It's calculated from the finished grade instead of the road, is what we typically measure to, and it measures to the average of the roof height of the top roof if it's a pitched roof. So we typically go to the top of the roof, but this has language that says we go to the average roof height. So that's a little bit of background about what's in the PRD. In addition to the PRD requirements, there are some requirements in our standard zoning code that apply district-wide. So the code doesn't specify where they apply. And in situations where there is a district-wide requirement and the language in the PRD does not specifically address it, those provisions also would control in Wild Dunes. Examples of those, the tree ordinance is one that applies to all districts. We regulate trees within Wild Dunes. Another example, the flood regulations. Those are island-wide regulations. Building codes, things of that nature apply island-wide and would apply to this development. So that's really some background on the codes that will be considered. I will say that over the previous probably year, if not two, the building department has been in discussions with Wild Dunes and their design team about all of these requirements at great length. So we have not yet seen a submittal. There has not been a permit request made. We don't have finalized plans, but we really have been over every kind of nuance of the concept of their plan, and we feel confident that when plans are submitted and what's going to be discussed here tonight, when those come to us, that all of these issues will have been vetted, reviewed, and really approved conceptually. So we don't expect there to be any kind of regulatory issues once the permit request is made. And that's some background information. If anybody has any questions about the background, I'd be glad to answer those, or we can go directly to the Wild Dunes folks.
Hearing none?
Okay.
Dr.
Thank
you
you.
very much. Building Director Al Palms, great job. Okay, we now have Dan Batista and Frank Fredericks, who are going to give us a presentation.
And if any of you guys need to move so that you can see better, please do not hesitate to get up and move around so that you can see. And Zach, I noticed you've got a recorder. If you want to bring it up here, that would be fine too.
Thank you, Mayor Carroll, and all City Council members for allowing us to come here this evening to present to you the proposed new hotel that we have planned for Wild Dunes. I also want to thank Douglas Carr and also his staff for all the hard work that they have put in on reviewing all of these plans. And as Douglas had mentioned, I wish I could say, Douglas, it was only the past year, but I think it's been like the past 3 years that we've been working through this. But it does fly. And so we have been working very closely with Douglas and his staff to make sure that we are complying with all of the necessary requirements of the PDD and also the other city requirements with respect to the ordinances that govern this development. So again, thank you so much, and also Linda, I want to thank you as well for all the hard work you have done, not only just for this development, but for everything with respect to the city of Isle Palms and also everything out at the resort itself. So thank you so much. With that, what I wanted to do was just go through a very brief presentation. There's only a few slides here to give an overview of the planned hotel development, and then I would also like to hand things over to Frank to walk through the specifics of the program for the hotel. What we have here is what we call the resort core. For those that are familiar, this is the Grand Pavilion, which leads to the Boardwalk Inn. You also have, the Boardwalk Inn was developed by Lowe, which is our company that also owns Wild Dunes Resort and manages the property. This property, the Boardwalk Inn, was developed by our company in 1998. We also have developed the Village condominiums, which are right here, that was in 2007, as well as the Sweetgrass Pavilion, which is the conference service center, and that was completed in 2006. We have our tennis center, which is flanked by the Tennis Pro Shop and the Harbor Pro Shop and Cart Barn. To the rear here is the swim center, and then we have the Palm Cove Pool, which was completed in 2013. And then this leads to the highlighted yellow area, which is the current development site for the new hotel, which currently houses the administrative building that has been on the property since about 1982 or so. And so this gives you a pretty good view zoomed in to the site. Currently, this is the existing check-in that the resort utilizes for the village and other homes and villas. And then, as you can see, here's the admin building and what we call the Palm Gate, which is access into the Wild Dunes community for residents as well as for resident contractors. So this is a bird's eye view looking from the ocean towards the resort core. As I mentioned, this is the village, this is the Grand Pavilion, the Boardwalk Inn, and this gives you a perspective of the new hotel in relation to the village and the resort core. This is a rendering that is looking up from the back of the pool towards the new hotel. And as I mentioned, Frank will go through the specifics of the entire programming for the hotel, but this just gives you a good view of what the rear of the hotel looks like. This is another close-up rendering of what will be the new conference center. For those of you that are familiar with the village condominiums at Wild Dunes, they are built on a podium with parking underneath. This new hotel will also seamlessly connect to that podium and will also be built above parking, so that this gives you a view from the existing Village Plaza for looking towards the new hotel and its lobby. And then this is an overview of the site plan, which Frank will be able to walk through all the specifics with respect to the program for the new hotel. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Frank.
I have to add my thanks to Linda, too, for an outstanding job on coordinating the beach nourishment program. Oh my gosh, one of the best things I've ever been a part of. So as I mentioned, I'll do this pretty quickly. This is the main hotel. There's 150 guest rooms in it. At this end of the hotel is function space. There's also a function room on the top. We've designed the top of the hotel, that 6th or 7th floor that Douglas referred to, as a space designed specifically for weddings. There'll be an outdoor wedding ceremony venue right there that looks directly at the ocean, and then an enclosed function room up here on top. Then here is a full destination spa, which I think would be a great addition to the island. It's about 10,000 square feet with 14 treatment rooms. It's designed with an outdoor spa garden, a place you can kind of relax, have a glass of wine after treatments. And then we expand the pool complex as well. This is the existing pool. We're adding a kids' water feature with fountains in it. We're adding a second pool as well as 2 hot tubs. And we add an outdoor restaurant. For those of you familiar with the Grand Pavilion, this is very similar to that. It's an outdoor but covered restaurant. And then probably the most impactful thing for the city, and this is something we've worked really hard on with the Community Association at Wild Dunes, is we've created pardon me, an expanded entrance. So as Dan mentioned, this is what's called the Palm Gate, the existing gate. We've moved the guardhouse in closer to within the community, and the reason we did that is so that there's more stacking available once construction's complete. And then right next to that, we've in essence expanded the entrance to create a 2-lane entrance at Palm, and then that breaks into 3 lanes where we greet our guests, and then they proceed on into the community or into the hotel. And again, here what we've done is added all 3 of those lanes to allow for stacking. So rather than have our guests at 41st and Palm backing up on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, they'll come all the way down to Palm and then enter that entrance and then stack in there. Operationally, we've also done some changes to where many of our guests, primarily the guests that stay in homes and condominiums, don't need to check in like you do at a traditional hotel anymore. We send them all their credentials in advance, and we've been doing that for 2 years in preparation for this. So over time, more and more people are learning, and they get a gate pass, they get a code to enter their accommodation, they can come right in here, and actually the 3rd lane is, if they have all their credentials, they can pass right through really quickly. So we believe with all of that, redesign, we should be able to keep folks off of Palm Boulevard and definitely off of 41st and Palm. Any questions for Dan or I?
Frank, where are your admin facilities going to be now?
Oh, great. Thank you. We're moving, in the administration building that Dan pointed out at the beginning, we're moving all those, almost all of them, about 70 of them, off the island to Daniel Island. And we're doing that for the reason of avoiding more congestion here, and they are services that don't need to be located here.
Question. I've heard a lot of talk about trees, significant trees. Can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy, Mayor Carroll.
Thank you.
So as Douglas had mentioned, we do need to adhere to the tree ordinance. So we actually, sorry. Sorry about that. That's a great question, Mayor Carroll, because we actually do have some wonderful grand live oaks on the property, and we are adhering to the requirements, which is that we have 12 grand oaks that have diameters of anywhere from 20 to 36 inches that need to be either left in place or relocated. So we are working with Davy Tree Movers to relocate 6 of the grand oaks, and then the other 6 are staying in place. And then with respect to adhering to the remainder of the tree ordinance, the landscape plan for the new hotel and for the site will be replacing any trees that would be displaced from the building footprint for the construction.
Thank you. Anyone else in council?
Let council.
Yes.
So in addition to the new entrance configuration, what other approaches have you all discussed to mitigate additional traffic that is coming on the island? Are there any measures that you're taking to help with that, besides this, what you've discussed already?
The ones I discussed, we're moving the administrative staff off property. The other significant one is the design for this building is that it's primarily conference group business. Most of those attendees don't rent a car and drive in. They typically take shared transportation or, some sort of a taxi service. The other thing we're doing that doesn't really help the island situation so much, but the congestion at the end, is we've arranged with Citadel Beach House to park the construction workers during construction and our summer seasonal workers during construction. If need be, we might have to arrange for parking somewhere else once construction is complete.
For additional? For
summer seasonal staff.
Okay.
That's when we add enough staff that really causes more congestion. Yeah. Okay. Typically during the non-summer months, it's fine.
Now, do you anticipate check-in times to be throughout the week, or will it be similar to people who come in for a whole week? Like, are you trying to stagger those at all, or how does that work out?
During the summer months, which obviously are the peak, we stagger Sunday and Saturday. That our owners still expect us to stay on those, 1 week patterns as much as we can.
Okay. Is there any wiggle room at all?
There is some, because in some of the smaller accommodations, we're able to fill them for 7 days, but have guests arrive on either a Sunday or Saturday, but depart on a Wednesday or Thursday, and then an arrival on those days.
And in terms of weddings and events, you mentioned there's going to be a new facility up top. I've heard concerns about noise. What will you do to mitigate noise or control noise?
Well, the sort of the party location is all indoors, and we'll certainly abide by all Wild Dunes and Isle of Palms noise ordinances.
Okay. So just the actual ceremony site is outside?
Right.
Okay. And will you be marketing that to out-of-town guests or also local?
Primarily local. There are some destination weddings that choose this area as their wedding, and when they're not from here, but generally it's locals, either the bride or the groom.
And in terms of traffic from weddings, the extra traffic or number of parking that you need for that, how will you adjust for that?
They'll enter the same way, so we'd stack them in that area, and then what we do is for anyone attending an event or staying in that building, will park underneath. I think.
I was encouraged to hear about the new entrance. Frank, you think that's going to take a whole lot off the main gate now? Do you have any estimate of percentage
that's going to be going all the way down Palm Boulevard, as opposed to what we have now.
Well, I mean,
That's a good Dan question. Maybe we should both just stand
You're a
here.
tag team.
I think as far as the traffic coming down Palm Boulevard, right now, all of the rental units that are managed by Wild Dunes Resort check in and utilize that main gate, as do other rental guests that are not part of our rental program. And I believe, and the current number, I think, is 250 rental units that Wild Dunes has, and there's another 250-plus rental units that would still be using the main gate. But all of our guests that either stay at one of those... Oh, sorry. All... Is this even on?
Yeah, it's get close.
It's not often I'm asked to speak up. So all of our guests, the 250 rental units that are managed by Wild Dunes Resort, will now go to the expanded gate for the resort, as will the guests for the Boardwalk Inn. So that will mitigate a significant amount of traffic up at the main gate, and traffic that previously would back up to 41st.
Very good, thank you.
Carol?
I just was hoping you could give us the highlights in terms of dates. So when will the admin building be demoed? When will construction start? And when do you hope to be finished? Just sort of the...
There's a lot of hopes in there.
Yeah.
So our current plan is to raise the administrative building sometime before July 4th, and then to start on the construction, which will primarily be horizontal construction, which will be site work and utility work. And then our plan is to hopefully be completed with construction sometime by the end of the summer of 2020 and early fall 2020. So that's the current time frame.
John?
One of the, I appreciate you, taking out consideration of trying to mitigate traffic and get everybody in there. But one of the things that you have to realize, it's not just there. It's going to be an impact from the bridges, from the time you enter to the island to the time you get to your gate. Obviously, it's going to be a big impact. One of the things I voiced previously when you guys were building the village was that increase in impact, and we have noticed it as a city, the traffic that comes through there. I'm just more concerned with the traffic that is going to traverse down Palm Boulevard. We already have a problem with it, especially with the growth of the Tri-County area. I would like to see Wild Dunes reach out and help us try to mitigate all the extra traffic that you guys are going to generate. Whether it's helping with purchase the camera that we have want to do at 41st Avenue or other ones, or make it easier for people to get from one end of the island, because there is an impact. And I tried to implement an impact fee when you guys built that village, but we couldn't do it because it wasn't in the original bid. So, and I'd still like to see that. There is going to be an impact. It's going to be an impact on the city. It's going to be an impact on our residents. I'd like to see y'all try and reach out and try to find a way to mitigate our impact, not just your gate.
Mm-hmm. I would be more than happy to participate in that. As a matter of fact, with us this evening is Jennifer Beal with Beal Engineering, and she has been working with us on traffic studies with respect to the community at Wild Dunes. But I welcome the opportunity to sit down and go through potential opportunities to mitigate that traffic. So however we need to get that done, I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you.
John?
I think Councilmember Smith brought up some really great points, and I'd like to dig in a little bit deeper to the parking issues. So can you give me an idea of how much parking is available underneath?
Yeah. So the parking underneath the structure is 139 spaces.
Okay.
And then there are another 15 spaces that would be off-street parking in the parking lot. And that's right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other off-street parking. There's in total about another 12 that are there.
And remind me how many units are occupying those spaces?
The hotel's 150 hotel rooms.
Okay. So hypothetical, if we're peak of season and someone's having a wedding, presumably a lot of the guests, you said there's a lot of locals, so they're probably not staying there. if the hotel is full, how do you plan to accommodate the parking of all of the guests?
You want to take that one?
Typically, the weddings we book are destination weddings, so they wouldn't be, the attendees would be local. The bride or the groom are typically local. So they spend the night.
Okay, so what about if the hotel was already full when the guests decided they wanted to book their stay? Yeah, I mean, we've all gone to weddings where the book of rooms has been blocked. And the follow-up question is, what size event can you handle, or what guest size can you handle at that venue?
The guest size is probably about 200. As of this point, we typically don't sell out so much that we can't accommodate wedding guests, just because of the number of accommodations we have.
But if the hotel was booked with non-wedding guests and you had a wedding, you wouldn't have parking for those people.
Well, we have additional outdoor parking that exists now, as well as parking under our conference center, the Sweetgrass Pavilion.
How many spaces are?
I don't know that one off the top of my head.
I can get you the specifics.
Okay. It sounds like there's potential in peak season for there to be some parking challenges.
That would be unique to the island, wouldn't it?
Just thematically, how many employees do you have in this new complex? At any given time?
Frank?
Probably about 40 or 50.
Are they accommodated within that parking footprint? They are.
Yeah.
Good plan.
Well, honestly, as I mentioned earlier, the concern we have is understanding that once the hotel is operating, and to some of your points, there will be times when we probably have to arrange for parking for our staff off-site. The reason we're using the Citadel Beach House is because they've helped us in the past. So if we've had a day, for example, when there's a big golf tournament, which typically is drive-in, and maybe another type of drive-in event, and let's say the resort's full, then we instruct all our employees that they have to park off-site, and then we shuttle them in.
Just one follow-up. How are you going to get to Daniel Island?
Well, it's too late. It's reversed now.
Okay,
All right.
Departure from the marina.
A follow-up on the wedding, you already have weddings there anyway. Will the rooftop be in addition to the other options that you offer on?
Yeah. It technically is, but part of the reason we're building this is because we have too many weddings on our grand pavilion already. And we're hoping that this will be so much more appealing. There'll be less weddings on the grand pavilion because that's equally a very crowded area within Wild Dunes.
Councilman King,
Yeah, it may be more of a statement, but feel free to react. Because I want us to be very open in some of these communications. A theme you've heard here by our colleagues is, if you're successful in your business, just like all the businesses on the island, you're going to have capacity or exceed capacity, and it could impact quality both for the residents inside the resort as well as outside. So you're being sensitive to that, and coming up with contingent plans will be helpful. But we have this balance, and you heard it earlier, the taxes have not been increased, property taxes. The reason we've been able to do that for years is because of the success of the businesses and our visitors. You contribute to the Charleston Business Bureau, the city contributes to the Charleston Business Bureau. You can't discriminate whether there's a wedding party from Minnesota or west of the Ashland. And you're going to accept those customers, as you should. And we want you to be successful, but I think you're sensitive to the issues we raised.
Okay. We hear you.
anyone else? Hearing none. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And now we're going to continue with our citizens' comments. Y'all, please feel free to sit and listen and stay for the whole council meeting. Yes, ma'am. Please come up, state your name and address. Oh,
you get the mic?
Hi, my name is Kay Greiman. I live at 1457th Avenue. This hotel will be a huge impact to my quality of life. As it is right now, the pool that they put in, they have had big organizations come into their facilities and had parties there where they cover the pool, and the noise is unbelievable. The music is very loud. On the weekends, even during the week, they have someone playing music there. They have someone with a microphone calling out bingo numbers. I can hear it inside of my home. So I'm very concerned when they said that's only the wedding. When I went to the meeting at Wild Dunes about the hotel, they told me there was an outside facility for weddings. There's an outside balcony where people can come out. I worry about microphones. I worry about music, just like the people who are across the way from Morgan Creek who hear that music and it affects their quality of life. This is really going to affect the quality of my life and my neighbors. I've had this house for 20 years. It's my forever home. It means a lot to me. I worry about the cars that back up, because right now, being on 57th, which is past their entrance, right now all the construction traffic, I still wait to get to 57th daily to get to my road. It's going to be huge. They can say they stack these people up and a little bit farther in, but you're talking about hundreds of people coming in and affecting my lifestyle. The sidewalk goes right past my house. It's just a little house. It's nothing to anybody else, but it's the world to me, and I'm very, very concerned about the noise level and the impact it's going to have on me. My neighbor is an older woman with a handicapped son who is backed up to the pool. You're going to bring the pool even closer to her place with the kiddie pool. You're putting in golf cart parking. My other neighbor's house, you're putting the pump station right next to their house. Right there, brand new pump station. There's no respect for that tiny little area, and it really concerns me a lot.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please, sir.
I guess I'll state my name. I'm Bob Miller. I'm at 3 Fairway Village Lane. I'm a member of the IOP Coyote Coalition. And I just have a point of clarification tonight that I'd like to make. In the May Public Safety Committee minutes, it states that the Coyote Management Plan included the IOP Coalition suggested changes, and it passed unanimously. However, in the package for tonight's meeting, the plan was not intended with the changes that were suggested at all. It was the old version, and there were no changes made as they suggested. So, point of clarification on that, and hopefully we can get that straightened out and get it passed and get moving on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, please? Yes, ma'am.
2 for 1.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Stevenson. I live at 1826 Ave, and for those council members that I have not had the opportunity to meet yet, I helped, along with Jessica and several other citizens in Isle of Palms, start the 2017 Farmers Market, and we just wanted to kind of say thank you so much for the opportunity and for your consideration of the 2018 proposal. We're really excited, and we look forward to hopefully working with everyone to make this a great thing for our city. So that was it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Come up front, please.
Oh, goodness. Just talking from back here.
I have a question about...
Address, please, for records.
I'm Doreen Olson, and I live in Wild Dunes. Don't throw eggs. When the construction starts, is the back gate going to remain open, or will that be closed?
Yeah, sure.
Come on, because I think that's going to be really important for the traffic flow. If we close off one gate,
Sure,
I think I can see really bad.
And it's Doreen?
Doreen.
I'm Dan Doreen. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
I think it would be good, actually, this is a great opportunity. I'd really like to introduce some other folks that are here with me this evening that are part of the team with Lowe. And actually, those individuals can answer your question even better than me, so that's why I want to introduce them. We have Mike Mansiger with Lowe. He is here now with us in Charleston working on this project. Sam Paris, and also Amy Hammer. And with that, Doreen, I'm going to have Mike come on up and go through, because Mike is really heading up the entire project with respect to the construction, so he can give you more information on the logistics.
Well, I'll let them take over. It's just everybody talked about the impact of traffic.
Great question.
Good question. Thank you.
That is a good question, and we learned from our initial community meetings that this was a big topic, especially with all the, the community's service contractors and I've seen it. I haven't been here this long, but it didn't take me long to figure out the kind of queuing and the stacks of the contractors at that gate. The original plan was to close it all down and send everybody through the sundial up there, the main gate. We are making accommodations to keep one lane open for incoming traffic, mostly for the contractors, but we've also, again, realized that a lot of the residents like to use that with the barcodes that have the barcodes to use that during off hours. So we're going to try and accommodate that as well, but again, it's going to be a one lane in. We have to restrict it somehow to keep a safe environment with the construction going on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, please.
And follow up on that question. Deborah Johnson, number 4, Grand Pavilion, and I agree with the lady that spoke earlier. This is going to be a huge impact on my life, my quality of life with this hotel. And I have 2 questions. One, is there any provisions for any kind of sound barriers or soundproofing that will lessen the noise of this whole complex for the residential people that live there full time? That's the first question. And the second one is this new gate proposal during the construction. It's one way in. I'm very, very concerned about emergency vehicles leaving the resort. It's going to get backed up at Sundial Circle, and there, seconds could matter with an ambulance. So an ambulance needs to get out of there immediately. We need to have not only one way in, we need the out as well.
Thank you.
Okay?
Does anyone want to answer that from the developers? Just, I hate to do it this way, but I think it's good for our community.
I'll make one comment on the emergency situation. I'm sure if there was an emergency, we could block, get the appropriate help to keep the entrances clear on both ends and use it the other way to get somebody out under an emergency.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, please? Going one? There we go. Rusty.
Evening, folks. My name is Rusty Williamson. I live at 605 Carolina Boulevard. And when I got the meeting packet about the agenda and everything, I saw a thing on here about an appointment of Administrator Tucker as City Administrator Emeritus. I asked the question, what does this entail? Any job description? Any pay? Nobody will talk. Everybody says, trust us, it's good for the city. Well, I was always raised on the pretense of trust but verify. And it just doesn't seem like there's much transparency there.
Thank you, Rusty. We're going to address during personnel our comments. So, anyone else, please? Going once. Yes, sir. Mr. Smiler. Dr. Smiler.
I'm Jim Smiley. I live 1644th Avenue. My questions are, I think, are really directed towards the Wild Dunes people. It looks like you all have gone to some effort to mitigate traffic within the planned residential development. I live on 44th Avenue. I live barely 2 blocks away from the Citadel parking. And I hear now that you're going to park construction workers there. You're going to park service personnel there, overflow traffic from events, weddings. All of these are parking in an SR1 zoned area, single-family dwelling. It just so happens that the Citadel is a non-conforming use within SR1 zoning. This doesn't seem to me to be much of a deal for those of us who live along Palm Boulevard. All of these people who are going to be apparently accommodated in the Citadel parking lot have to go past my home. There's only one artery from the connector bridge to the terminus of Highway 703 where your hotel is to be constructed. So I'm concerned, disturbed, dismayed, you add the adjective, at what you are planning to do to my life. We have always put up with noise at all times of the night from bands at the Citadel for events there. We've put up with the parking for events, and now I'm learning that I'm going to have to put up with construction workers, service workers, wedding personnel, and so on. It just doesn't sound like a good deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Going once? Anyone else? Going twice? We're going to carry on with our council meeting. Thank you all. Reports from standing committees. First up, the bat is Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ways and Means Committee met 5 o'clock Tuesday, May 15th. All council members were in attendance. Well, this is really interesting. Y'all don't need to.
Damn, Jimmy.
I can make it interesting.
Don't take it personally.
Okay. We approved the previous meeting's minutes, and then we went right into the financial statement. Treasurer Suggs reported on the first 10 months of fiscal year 18, or April 30th, 2018. General fund revenues were 78% collected, and general fund expenditures were 79% expended. Property taxes revenue was slightly higher for the same period in 2017. And she reported that all revenue sources except rental licenses, parking, and other were ahead of revenues through 10 months of fiscal year 17. Let's see. Spending associated with the offshore dredging project was like, it was a big item this year, so our cash balance has come down as what we expected, about $3 million. She's working on an agreed set of procedures with me for the marina businesses to follow and ensure the revenue and cost of sales are being presented correctly. Tourism schedules year over year, municipal accommodation tax and beach preservation fees running 3% ahead of last year. Charleston passed through, the city was told to expect and budget for a decrease in fiscal year 18, but we've been told to expect the amount increase in fiscal 19 by about $70,000. Hospitality tax is strong, showing growth of 5% over 17. We talked about the Great Lakes dredge and dock, the final expenditures there, and FEMA money being collected to help with that. So we go right into new business. There was no old business. There was a report on recommendation from the Public Works Committee to approve a change order in the amount of $9,073.98 for the relocation of a junction box to avoid conflict with a power line. Administrator Tucker noted that this expense was below the $10,000 toggle in the procurement code, for which he has authority to authorize, and this was listed on the agenda for purposes of reporting only. Recommendation Public Safety Committee to award a contract amount of $25,000 to Mullerton Pyrotechnics for the 2018 July 4th fireworks show. And it passed unanimously, and if you want to take that up now.
Yeah, would somebody like to make a motion for
I'd like
that?
to make a motion.
I'll second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Only question I have, this is the third year of a 3-year contract?
That's what I understand.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Passes. Yes, sir.
Then we had a report on emergency purchases from Technology Solutions in the amount not exceeding $27,000 for replacement of City Hall server, experienced interruptions in service. Linda Tucker explained all this earlier, but we moved to approve the $27,000, and I don't know if you need a motion or not.
Yes, we did.
Okay, I'll make a motion that be approved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Let you in. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Nays?
Recommendation from the Recreation Committee to approve the 2018 Farmers Market Budget.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays?
Okay. E, discussion on fiscal year 19 budget. Linda has pretty much outlined that. Do we have some of these for everybody in attendance?
Yes, well, we have those for all council members. We can make copies for everybody.
Well, this needs to be posted online, I believe.
Do we have them in the back? Okay.
This is everything that Linda just explained about an hour ago. Okay, so I'm not going to go over it again. So,
and we'll be talking about it again later on.
We'll be talking about it later on. Basically, that's about it. I do remember that we talked about the hospitality tax. I would like to see the city set aside some funds to, if you will, provide some return on investment of the businesses that pay this in. We've talked about it several times with administrator and myself, that in the past we've bought fire trucks, police cars, which you need all that, but the businesses don't see anything that comes back directly. It wouldn't take a lot, but it would take an effort to show them that we appreciate all this money, and we're going to help them with future promotions or whatever they would like to endeavor. There was no miscellaneous business. Next meeting date will be 5:00 p.m. Tuesday, June 9th.
Thank you. Chairman, all right, Public Safety Committee.
Thank you. The Public Safety Committee met at 5 p.m. Wednesday, May 2nd, with all members present, including council members Bell and Ward, as well as city staff. We did not have any citizens' comments. In terms of coyote management, we received an update from Interim Police Chief Usry. She noted that different new kind of collar traps have not yet been deployed because these traps must be secured to something substantial, and our island geography does not offer many opportunities along those lines. She also reported that the Municipal Association, the city's liability insurance carrier, has confirmed that the city would not be insured if it chose to go forward with any kind of coyote hunt, and Wild Dunes has indicated that they would not allow the city to hunt within the gates of the community. The committee considered a coyote management plan originally presented by the police department, and we passed a version with edits suggested by the Isle of Palms Coyote Coalition. For council members, 2 versions were included in your packet. I don't believe they were included in the packet that was posted publicly, but you should have had the edited and original versions both in your packet. I did. With the edited version had yellow highlight marks on it. The edited version places the responsibility of using lethal force for coyote control with the city council rather than the police department, and also supports a change in messaging for the community rather than coexisting to be coyote smart. The committee voted to recommend the coalition's edited version to the full council, and we can go ahead and take that up now, I guess.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Discussion. All right, discussion.
Yes. Would you explain this council being responsible for lethal force rather than our law enforcement? I find that completely opposite of what we should be doing. So educate me, please.
Well, we didn't discuss it at length, but I believe that the responsibility, and maybe...
I'll be happy to take that one on. The police department version, and I think it was a little bit misspoke. The police department version says it is the discretion of the police department to decide whether to use lethal force. My position had been in that discussion in public safety, no, it is council as we requested to understand, are we able to, but working through city administration, not the sole discretion of the police department to make that determination. And I think that is a responsibility of the council and city administrators.
Certainly from a policy standpoint, in terms of
correct
active, that's another matter. What was the police department's opinion on this provision?
They wrote it.
So there's a distinction between setting policy versus following policy. I'm getting the acting chief's body language is not consistent.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay, so as this has unfolded with these versions that were included in the packet that were not included in the public packet, and some dialogue really this afternoon about the input from the police department versus input from the Coyote Coalition has made me a little insecure about whether or not council today is being presented with a right version subject to adoption. And so I think that probably so that we can make sure that we're getting the job done as it should be done, that this maybe should go back to committee. I think that this city fully intends to adopt a coyote management plan, but I'm worried that we may have hiccuped here in terms of the edited version. And that way would give me peace of mind that the police department has thoroughly given their input.
Okay, I'm going to respectfully disagree with that. This was discussed in detail in the Public Safety Committee. Both versions were submitted to council for review to individual council members. There's substantial likeness in these two versions. And again, the comment, and first of all, it wasn't just, the comment about who has sole discretion to decide whether to lethal hunt. Speak quite upfront about this. We wanted to understand, could we? We've already been through a process that said we probably can't. Right? We've been through the police department. We had the police department's input. They requested an additional 30 days under Chief Buchanan. We did that. We waited that out and went through it and came back and said, no, it's likely not insurable, that Wild Dunes wouldn't support it anyway. So lethality is probably not even something that we're debating within the plan. Right? But at the bottom of that plan, it does say, in the police department version that Captain Swain put together, was the use of lethal force is at the discretion of the police department. It's really at the discretion of our codes, our laws, our ordinances, and I was trying to revert it back to that, nothing more. If you look at and take the time to look at the difference between these two documents, beyond that, there's almost nothing. But we're now, I don't know, 3-4 months into this, and we want to put it to another one instead of taking a living document that doesn't bind us to anything and move it to another council meeting. I disagree with that.
I'd like to move an amendment that we defer this issue. We need to do it right. There's been some different feedback here this evening. There's some uncertainty. Better to wait a month, 2 months. This is your government grinding away slowly, Randy. So that's my motion, is to defer.
Do I have a second for the...
I'll second.
But you mentioned amendment. Was your original motion?
Yes.
Yes, there was. And so we have a second to the motion, so discussion.
I have.
Yes, ma'am, please.
So I'm very confused on the lethal control issue. So, because I didn't think you could discharge a firearm on the island. So why is it even in there? Is even an option? I mean, I guess, and somebody bludgeoning or, anyway, I just, the whole,
again,
the
to do
spirit
that,
of it for me I don't like that we could even possibly be encouraging anybody to discharge a firearm. I
Okay,
mean, that's my,
again to that point.
okay, so that's my.
It is not legal. The intention was to understand what it would take should we opt to do that. We vetted that. We went through it. It came back from the police department, said we can't do it. It came back from city administration, said we can't do it. Came back from Wild Dunes, who occupies much of the land that we're talking about. We can't do it. The police department version says it's at their discretion. Is it? If you can't do it, it would have to come back to council as an ordinance change. We'd have to go through all kinds of insurance issues and all that. It's a non-issue within this document. But if that's the basis for delaying the document, I seriously disagree. I think it's time we move on from this subject and not just continue over and over again.
My understanding is that this was the report from the chairman of the committee. Let the chairman address these issues.
I have another question, Dan, before we go further. Mr. Moy?
My understanding is that the language that's concerning makes lethal control more restrictive rather than less restrictive. And if it's a living document that we can change, and we recognize this is something we can amend as we learn more about what's going on with coyotes, as we get more input from other experts, I personally don't see any reason why we wouldn't go ahead and move forward with the changes that have been proposed here.
Okay.
I would like to hear from the other council members if there was any confusion of knowing the version that was being recommended. Between to make sure that everybody saw both versions and we're able to look at both versions and we're not confused by any of that. And otherwise, I think that this one discussion of lethal force may be more of a wording issue. That what our intention is for the city council to hold the responsibility of whether to allow lethal control or not to let that
That's right.
rest with the police department, in more of a policy sense, I believe is what the intention of that. And I don't know if that's not clear, whether we need to reword.
Does the acting police chief support this? Either recommendation in total or this provision?
Would you like to speak to that?
Chief, we're going to have to ask you to come forward.
So, in the document that we have with the changes from the coalition, our intent at this point is if the hunt is to happen, it has to be something that City Council approves for us to do. I don't believe that the police department should make that decision, so I think we can go forward with what you're suggesting. As you say, it is a living document. If we decide we need to make that change, we can at that point. And it is supposed to be fluid, and that is the intent, because the coyote situation is going to change.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for clarification. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, vote on the amendment first. And let's have a clarification of the amendment, please.
The amendment is to defer action from tonight, if there's no time frame set, but just to defer the action tonight.
Okay.
It's my understanding.
For all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those, let's do by roll call, please. All those in favor,
okay.
raise your hand for Marie to see.
So you were supporting the deferment, and so, okay, that, I can do that too.
Okay, back to the original amendment of going.
Don't you have to get the no votes?
Yes.
Yes. Well, okay. All those against,
Say nay.
say nay.
Nay.
Raise your hand.
Thank you.
I thought it was pretty obvious with the two, but that's okay, you're right. Okay, back to the original amendment. All those in favor of going forward with this, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay?
No.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Keep going.
Wait, oh, sorry, hold on. I gotta call up my phone. There it is. Okay, moving on to the budget. Was we already touched on, or have we? The committee voted to boost funding for police vehicles, so voted to recommend boosting funding for police vehicles, so 5 new vehicles would be SUVs instead of sedans as part of an ongoing push for all SUVs in the police fleet over time. Interim Chief, Managed Beach Parking Plan, Interim Chief Usry has connected with Mount Pleasant Police about their posting an officer at the intersection of Rifle Range and the Connector on busy weekends to direct traffic, and when they are not available, off-duty county officers should be able to assist with that. We discussed Wild Dune Resort's plans for a new hotel, and our administrator offered that the city could order its own traffic study from 41st and Palm to the entrance of Wild Dunes in hopes of finding a better mechanism for traffic control. But the city lacks leverage in asking Wild Dunes to follow recommendations. Update on South Carolina Department of Transportation micro resurfacing of Palm Boulevard from 21st to 41st. At that time, if it had gone as scheduled, it would be over by now. However, the latest from the contractor that I have heard today from our assistant city administrator is that they are aiming for the week of June 12th because of weather delays. Staff is also going to check and see if it's possible to postpone that until after beach season because of the obvious headaches that might cause for us. Meanwhile, the committee agreed with our administrator to provide free parking in the municipal lot when the day of resurfacing. According to our assistant administrator, city staff will be able to complete and submit a sign plan to South Carolina Department of Transportation for an encroachment permit for signage for our changes to the Managed Beach Parking Plan, but needs to get a few more things of feedback from City Council. So since that is not yet complete and the city does not yet have the encroachment permit, it is advised that we defer on our upcoming second reading on that ordinance.
We'll come to that in a little bit. Come down later.
We began an initial discussion of alternative options for parking passes for residents to provide guests as we go to year-round implementation of managed beach parking later this year, but we will be looking at that later. We discussed proposed ordinance on parking in the loading zones as crafted by our city attorney with no suggested changes. It's on tonight's agenda for second reading. We also revisited a proposed ordinance for parking restrictions on waterway and related concerns by residents, but discussed how the ordinance also turns 41st Avenue into resident-only parking, which will include boat trailers to offset that change. We had no changes to that, suggested that ordinance, which is also on the agenda for second reading tonight. We looked at recommendations for County Transportation Commission project requests and for fiscal year 19. We set priority number 1 as a recommendation for intersection improvements at the end of the Isle of Palms Connector and Palm Boulevard. And priority 2 is a creation of regulation bicycle lanes on both sides of Palm Boulevard from 21st Avenue to 57th Avenue. We also discussed the possibility of requesting funds for the waterway multi-use path, but our assistant administrator suggested we would be in a stronger position to make that request for fiscal year 20. So I can go ahead and we can make that recommendation now for our CTC project request for fiscal year 19 being priority 1, intersection improvements at the end of Isle of Palms Connector and Palm Boulevard, and priority 2, creation of regulation bicycle lanes.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you.
Finally, our police and fire departments have been quite busy lately. That includes Officer Phillips preventing someone from jumping from the bridge in a dramatic rescue in April. Kudos to him and the other officers involved for their life-saving actions. Interim Chief Usry also announced that the city of Isle of Palms was named the safest city in South Carolina for its size and 48th in the nation's safest cities an achievement that she said could be traced to the addition of officers, 2 officers last year in last year's budget, a livability officer and a criminal investigations officer. Our next meeting will be at 5 p.m. Monday, June 4th, and we intend to meet on the first Monday of the month at 5 p.m. for the balance of 2018, with the exception of August.
Thank you very much. Okay, Public Works.
And I want to say shout out to being safest city. That's just so awesome.
Yeah.
Public Works met May 7th with all members present and all staff that's expected to be there present. Director Pitts gave his report. Garbage collection was flat for April, but yard debris collection was up. He installed a valve at 19th. Our hazardous waste recycle day was held. That's always a highlight of the year. And unfortunately, the shredder broke down, so the company will provide another shred day to the city at no additional charge, and a date is still to be determined for that. But we get to shred twice, so yay. We discussed the 32nd Avenue drainage issue, which appears to now fall under the county's jurisdiction, and there appears to be no resolution at this time because the county does not want to pay for the solution. So this is just a very frustrating, ongoing issue that we will continue to stay on top of, and we'll have to see if we want to budget the $150,000 to fix it. We discussed phase 2 drainage, which is continuing. It's a big project, but it's going very well. But David Stevens of Civil Site Engineering presented a drawing showing the addition of a junction box, which we've already addressed earlier. So we did discuss that. We had some further discussion on whether we could tap into some SCE&G funding for additional lighting at the guardhouse, but that is not something that we are looking at further right now. Phase 2 drainage will be delayed slightly because there will not be work done on the weekends in the summer because we just can't handle the addition of more construction traffic. We discussed the fiscal 19 budget, which we've already talked about. We supported the public safety's recommendations for the CTC, so we've already just talked about that. That's wonderful. We talked about the job description for the Assistant Public Works Director for Maintenance and Facilities, and the attributes that we want for this person, and we will have more for personnel on that. And best news of all is weekly recycling starts Wednesday, June 13th, and twice weekly garbage begins week of June 4th, and we will meet again Thursday, June 7th at 9 a.m. That concludes my report.
Great report. Thank you very much. Recreation.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The committee met on May 7th at 5 p.m. Everybody was present. The director gave her report and noted that most of the children's programs and senior programs have stopped for the summer months because many of the residents and travel and the children will be out of school. Our summer camps began June 11th, and all sections of week camp and summer camps have been filled. And our 30th annual Pickles Play-Doh sand sculpting competition will be Saturday, June 9th at 9 a.m. At the front beach. Another event is the IOP Beach Run, which is scheduled for Saturday, July 21st, and the Half Rubber Tournament, which would be Saturday, August 18th at 8 a.m. We did review and discuss continually again our fiscal year 19 budget. We did have some more discussion of full court times for adults, basketball times, and we'll be addressing that later on in the fall. We did talk about the consideration and passed on to the proposal for the farmers market would be this fall, and which we already voted on. We've also discussed, as we did in our budget, the opportunity to have the recreation center open on Sundays, so in staffing that. There was no other business, and our next meeting is set for June 5th at 5.
Great report. Thank you very much. Personnel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Personnel met on Tuesday, May 8th. Quorum was present. Press and public were duly notified, and the minutes of the regular meeting of April 5th and special meeting of March 26th were approved. With no citizens' comments, we went into old business. A and B, dealing with the city code and frequency of performance reviews, are deferred until August and will not appear on the agenda until that time. Old business C, review of the budget. The committee recommends an increase in the qualified search firm to be increased to $75,000 based on information gathered by our HR officer, and that's already been covered in our budget review. Under new business, there was a discussion of recruitment process for hiring the city administrator, chief of police, and assistant public works director of facilities and maintenance, including methods of keeping citizens informed in the progress, engagement of appropriate standing committees in the process, and also a timeline. After a lot of discussion, we determined that once the search firm is hired, that they will help us to formulate all of these three topics. Okay, open up there. Okay. Then we had a report from a human resources officer related to the recruitment services, and she gave us approximately 5 to 6 different search firms that she wanted us to read all the materials. It was a massive amount of information, but our council member Rice read it before we got there, but none of the rest of us had read it, so it is going to be covered in our June meeting, along with some other search firms that have been identified. In June, what we intend to do is have each of the Personnel Committee members present their top 2 recommendations of all of the search firms that have been given to us. By the end of that meeting, hopefully with the members and staff and those present, we will come to a consensus of what the top 2 search firms we believe for the city would be. And we will present that to City Council at the June meeting and actually have them vote on which of the top 2 they want us to hire. So this is part of the inclusion process that we hope to have throughout this process, where it's not just the Personnel Committee doing all of this, but really incorporating other committees as well as the full council. We then, for some reason, it's very, very slow opening up. Okay, let me see what it says here. We then, it's gone. Wait a minute, excuse me, I'm sorry. Everything just disappeared from the file.
That's called technology.
I know. Have it all right here in front of me, have it all noted. Okay, let's get back to where, okay, here we go. So, we reported on human resources, we reported on, okay. And then, in terms of that meeting, we're finished, but because I failed to include in that agenda voting on the new titles that we had been discussing, we had to have another meeting on May 15th. So I'm going to go to report to the, that meeting, in which, again, the public was duly notified. We had a quorum, and we went to a motion to change the titles of 2 of our current employees. And by unanimous vote, the Personnel Committee recommends that our current Assistant City Administrator, Desiree Fregoso, be appointed Interim City Administrator with all the duties and responsibilities as recorded in the City Administrator's job description, City Procurement, and City Codes, effective June 1st, 2018. I therefore move that Desiree Fregoso be appointed Interim City Administrator effective June 1st, 2018.
Second. I hear a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing passes.
Also, by unanimous vote, the Personnel Committee recommends that our current City Administrator, Linda Tucker, be appointed City Administrator Emeritus effective June 1st through October 8th. As such, she remains an Isle of Palms employee, will work exclusively from home, and complete special projects as assigned by Council on May 31st and from time to time thereafter. I therefore move that Linda Tucker be appointed City Administrator Emeritus effective June 1st through October 8th, 2018.
Second.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Why this title?
It was recommended and approved by attorneys.
Attorneys.
There they go again.
Well, I researched this weekend. Shouldn't it be a emeriti?
After some discussion came forward, if you want to go with the true Latin interpretation, it would probably be AE. But the common and the most used title is emeritus. But it can be changed to whichever the council would like to do.
Back to the first question. That's all that you've been advised that you can tell me about
Yes.
the title.
Yes.
Came from the attorneys.
Yes.
Not this attorney.
Can I amend it to be Grand Poobah?
Okay.
Grand Poopah of the Outer Islands was once
Okay.
again.
Any other question on that? Any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Any signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Okay. Ayes have it.
Our next meeting is June 7th at 5 p.m. The City of Palms' current vacancies by department: the Police Department. The department continues recruitment for a part-time animal control officer position. The department has filled 9 of the BSO positions and continues to interview to fill the remaining opening. There is 1 sworn opening until the chief's position is filled. Fire Department, fully staffed. Public Works, fully staffed. Recreation, fully staffed. Building, fully staffed. City Hall, fully staffed. Our April Safety Sweepstakes winners: General Government is Debbie Suggs. Police Department is ACO Chris Aniorato. Fire Department, David Michalisi. And Public Works, Charles Williams. There goes my report.
Thank you very much. Real property.
Okay. Real property meeting was held Thursday, May 10th at 4 o'clock. All members, council members, friends, board, myself were present. The citizens' comments were very limited. Just one comment in which a resident wished to know whether the marina leases controlled by the city were up for renewal and what was the RFP process that the city would use for those leases. Comments from marina tenants. Jay Clark of Morgan Creek Grill stated that he wanted to forge an agreement with the other marina tenants for parking this tourist season. No surprise there, and we continue to work on those, so beyond that, it's probably not worth elaborating in this meeting. We had an interesting issue, and Councilmember Ward moved to reorder the agenda so that we could address it, but I'm going to give you the brief version. There's a property at 1100 Palm and the right-of-way on Pavilion Drive that has an interesting history. It was purchased in 1958. Lo and behold, the city's property line runs through about 1/3 of the building itself. So we had a kind of an interesting situation. How do you deal with that when people are trying to sell the property with clear title when the city's property line runs through that property? So without getting into a lot of detail on this, we had a lot of discussion around could we do a revert contract where if that building were to be torn down, we have basically passed title to the owners. They can sell the property, the building gets torn down. We then revert back to the city property line as opposed to redrawing the property line, which the owners of that property would have preferred that we just move the property line out. We're waiting on real estate attorney advice on how to handle this, but clearly we have to come up with a solution that accommodates somebody who's owned the property since 1958.
Comment.
Yes.
Isn't it a quick claims issue? Did you address that?
We addressed a lot of it. Yeah. And we're going to try to do it as easy and expeditiously as we can with sound legal advice, I think is
So,
really.
are you making a recommendation that we hire an attorney to?
We can do it here. Yes, I am making a recommendation that we have a real estate attorney who specializes in these issues.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Nays? Thank you.
So I just want to confirm, you all have in your packet an engagement letter, that I need to make sure that you're comfortable that I sign that engagement.
Which is Sid Boone.
Correct.
Yes. I mean, this is Sid Boone who we've
We've used in
engaging.
real estate matters
Yes.
before.
So should we re-vote on that with Sid Boone? Since we've already voted to hire an attorney?
Sure, you could go ahead and vote.
Randy, would you like to?
So just
I'll make that motion, that's fine.
say
With
you
Sid Boone.
approve
With
of
Sid
the-
Boone.
Okay. Second. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Thank you. That's clarified.
In old business, we discussed alternative parking for the marina's employees, and this, again, continues to be a complex issue. I'd like to compliment Administrator Tucker for coming very prepared to this meeting with virtually every property on the island that could potentially accommodate. We looked at churches, the Citadel, Water and Sewer Commission. Very active discussion around that. We stated the preference still by the Real Property Committee that if there's a way forward with the Water and Sewer Commission, that it's the most appropriate because it's a large lot adjacent to the marina property where we don't have to get involved with shuttling and other issues. And we are continuing to try to press forward with that. Again, that's a very complex issue. We've had a lot of discussion back and forth both in this meeting and outside with the tenants at the marina. We had an update on property tax payments from the marina tenants. They've all paid their fair share. We've had an update on the Marina Bulkhead Rehabilitation Project. It was 99% complete at that time. I think you saw in the budget package that we're looking at, the painting of the bulkhead, and beyond that, I think we're done, right? Desiree's going, yes. Update on Front Beach Walkover and restroom renovations. That project is also complete at this point. New business considerations were consideration of options for securing beach trash barrels. That's not tying them down. It's should we have lids on them to prevent animals and other things from getting into them and causing spillage onto the beach. The problem with that, we're still looking into it, is it would potentially cause a change in the collection processes and the ability to do them as we do them now. In old business, we looked at the budget for the IOP, Marina, and Front Beach. Again, that was addressed in the Ways and Means comments in the new budget. Long discussion on the IOP Marina's community and residential objectives. It was offered that the perspective really is what's the residential return on investment. We're making choices as a council as to how we spend money and balancing that between projects like drainage and whether or not we should make some investments in the marina going forward near term and overall having a plan long term that accommodates the residential interest. Council member Ferrant stated, and I think it's worth noting, that the referendum itself was a 70-30 vote in defeat, was indicative of feelings that the residents do feel that they've lost some ownership of the marina as a city asset. City Chair and myself spoke very clearly that, we're not going to invest a lot of money in the marina, but there are basics that we know we have to continue to invest as reflected in the budget, regardless of that marina referendum, but we have an obligation both under lease and for safety considerations to ensure that we are making appropriate investments in the marina. Councilman Ward stated the city needed more financial controls at the marina. We're in active discussions. That was also part, as you saw, the audit line in the Ways and Means Committee. Administrator Tucker stated that Assistant Fregosa has been working on an RFP. That RFP is actually complete, and as we look at investments in the marina, we're a little bit out of order. We had hoped to have the RFP, know what recommended changes by engineering firms were before we put budget money in. We didn't have that luxury this particular time. So we moved forward with putting some monies in, but we are still moving forward with bids for an engineering firm to tell us what appropriate actions we should take going forward. With that, we close the meeting. The Real Property Committee will meet the first Wednesday of each month at 4 p.m. for the balance of 2018, with the exception of August. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
With regards to your last point about the audit for the marina, is that an audit based on the past, or is that setting up some guidelines so we ensure maximum revenue in the future?
We'll wait to hear from the auditors what they recommend.
What's your understanding, Mr. Chairman?
My explanation at the Real Property Committee was what I was looking for is process and procedure going forward to ensure appropriate practice and fiscal accountability. I did not in this meeting, and we did not go into detail on what an audit would entail, to your point, Councilman, looking historically backwards. The concern that was discussed there is how do we go forward, how do we understand the revenues as they flow in, affect gross income, gross profit, and our ability to know that the city is accounting going forward in a way that makes sense.
It seems that looking forward is more important than looking backwards. And it's obviously important that the city derives the revenue that we expect for the agreement. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank y'all. Okay.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
With relation to the citizens' comment about the lease at the Morgan Creek Grill,
It was nothing specific.
I'm just wondering if we are going to be doing an RFP, or, I mean, because that is coming up, and what are our intentions, and have y'all thought about for Morgan Creek?
We have not discussed it in Real Property Committee. No.
Still several years out, so.
Well, not 2020, I think.
Yeah.
Don't skip years on us. Count them all.
Well, okay, I just think it needs to be sort of in the mix.
Yeah, understood.
With where the marina's concerned and revenue.
Good.
No worries.
Any other questions? Hearing none and trying to go forward a little bit. Reports from city officers, boards, commissions, accommodations, tax advisory committee, the minutes are attached. Board of Zoning Appeals, the minutes are attached. Planning Commission, the minutes are attached. Reports from special or joint committees, none. Petitions received, referred, or disposed of, none. Bills already in possession of council. A second reading of ordinance 2018-05. This has to do with our parking. However, as we heard earlier, we have not received an encroachment permit. And also, I think one of the things when we go back and talk is Waterway Boulevard parking between 21st and 20th Avenue. Is that part of the Waterway Boulevard? Just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, what you're alluding to is that while we're going to need to defer second reading on this because we do need to wait until we have the SCDOT encroachment permit, there are a couple of things that we need some council input on, and I guess I'm going to ask them if you can move some of these visuals closer so that you can see them. One of the areas has to do with Waterway Boulevard. What was stated when we started designing this year-round plan was that there would be no trailer parking on Waterway Boulevard. And Waterway Boulevard actually extends further than from 21st to 41st. Most people think of it as only 21st to 41st, but there's actually a block that goes from 21st to 20th. And so we wanted to get some input from you all as to whether or not you felt it was necessary to include that little stretch from Waterway and 21st to Waterway and 20th in the no trailer parking. There's rarely anything happening along that stretch other than the existing residents going in and out of their own homes there. We worried that the addition of more signs, which we would have to put there, that some might find that objectionable, and so we just needed clarity from you all about whether or not you wanted that no trailer parking to stop at 21st Avenue.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason for it.
You don't think anyone would park a trailer and walk to the marina from there?
Okay, so please kind of keep that in your...
Yeah, understood.
So that everyone knows, there actually is a boat ramp on right there. That is not a public boat ramp,
Right.
but it's owned by the beach company and under a special deed to a collection of homes in that community that expires, I think, in 2020 or 2025, at which point the beach company could do whatever they want with. I'm not recommending we make any changes now, but just so that everyone's aware.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so...
Mr. Mayor,
yes, sir, I'm
don't
sorry.
we have in our existing ordinance, ordinance against trailer parking in the rights of way already?
I would
do.
have to, yes, we
We
do.
do.
I would have to ask Interim Chief Usry to opine on the language of that ordinance, because I don't have it.
Okay, that's fine. But we're not voting on this right now. But I'm just saying, it's already, we already have a motion, and then it goes to...
Parking over 20 feet in a public right-of-way.
Right.
It's just that I need to know for the sign plan, because if the intention was not to include that stretch of waterway, then we'll need to modify the language in the ordinance, and we need to modify the sign plan. So we will need to get that feedback from you all tonight, and then...
I didn't mean to interrupt, but if that's the sign plan, then you're going to have to put a sign that says no trailer parking everywhere on the island. I mean, the fact that they say that there's no trailer parking, I mean, if you just eliminate the fact that there's that section of our ordinance, or, enforce certain areas, or just only allow trailer parking on 41st Avenue, everything else falls within the normal ordinance, is what I'm thinking. But, I guess we'll discuss that between now and next month, though.
Well, I think...
That's what I'm thinking.
We were hoping to get an answer on two things: the Waterway Boulevard no trailer parking, which is in the language of this ordinance, and then also the stretch of 41st Avenue. I don't know if you guys can see it from here. I can't, but there's a section of 41st Avenue that extends from where it intersects with Waterway Boulevard into the marina site. And part of that area has to be no parking, because that's where the fire trucks go in and out, so it has to be no parking. The balance of it is still part of 41st Avenue, and it's the section of 41st Avenue that the City of Isle of Palms controls. It's not an SCDOT road, so we don't need an encroachment permit from them, but we need for you all to tell us, do you want that to be marina parking? Do you want it to be resident-only parking, or just what you would like for it to be, so that we can note that on the sign plan, so that it can get appropriate approvals with the ordinance in order for us to go forward?
I'm going to let our public safety chair...
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I think I may have come up in real property. Or did it?
Well, it
Okay,
did.
real property there.
The discussion, I think most of us were unaware that was a non-SCDOT portion of the road. And I had checked with Douglas Kerr to understand where is the definition of the city's property lines on that. And it actually goes pretty much to the exit, the current exit of the marina. So looking at that and having had, a fair amount of public commentary about their lack of availability to either park a trailer or park anything in the marina, to me it was the most logical place to say, let's just extend that. We're working through a lot of marina issues, and I would say cooperatively with the tenants right now. But if residents are able to park their trailers, their cars, or whatever, free of charge, all the way to the end of the city's owned property in a safe way, then it made sense to make that part of the overall plan that we were trying to put forward for 41st Avenue.
Yes, sir.
Point of clarification. Originally, when we discussed this, we had talked about prohibiting the trailers in the residential district, which is about Satilli and beyond,
That's correct.
as I recall. Is there any interest in coming back, both addressing what you've suggested, as well as, since it's not a residential area, allowing for that parking to relieve some of the concerns expressed by residents, so they have a place to put a trailer? And I don't know if you want to...
That's
what we're saying.
Yeah.
That's in there.
Yeah, yes.
That's what we're saying.
That's what I
That
want-
would be from Finks and Tilly down to...
That's what I want
to
to clarify.
Correct.
Is Susan put that in?
Yes. that's what-
And then
Exactly.
your intention was for also to allow trailer parking for residents in this new space, or this
So
space.
if you think of it this way, what we discussed at the last council meeting was resident-only trailer and car parking from Frank Satilli to Waterway. All we're talking about is now extending it to the length of 41st into the marina property with the same stipulations, resident-only car and trailer parking. It just gives the residents a little more parking than we had originally contemplated.
That clarifies that. Now, how about Waterway Boulevard from 21st to 20th?
Yeah, I have a question about that. Are we actually having to add signs all the way up and down Waterway for the
And
no
that's why we have
trailer?
another visual here, because we wanted you guys to see the signs so that you would be aware. What our goal has been at staff level in working on this was to try not to have to add any more poles. So you're going to see that far left sign is the resident permit parking sign that's up there now. We would just be removing the dates and times from that sign.
Linda, if I may, though, back to her, and I think this is a fair question for all of us, right? The practicality and the problem we're trying to solve is pretty much the berm where existing car and trailer parking occurs. There's probably a logical cutoff point on Waterway where you say, you know, beyond that, I'm going to put my golf hat on, right? Hole number 6, or I think 6 is the last one that runs along there. But at that point, nobody's parking boat trailers beyond that anyway, right? What we were trying to do is get the boat trailers out of the public access of the sidewalks and just say, let's eliminate it there. The question that would come beyond that is, as you drive Waterway, which I often do, right? Are we saying that a lawn company can't park a trailer as well along, you know, somebody's right away in front of your yard, right? So I think maybe as we bring this forward, and we're not voting on it tonight, we do pick a logical cutoff point on Waterway where, for this season, we're saying, look, let's solve the problem we tried to solve, but let's not solve beyond that problem.
Oh, we just need.
You, my friend, are using common sense.
We just need that input so we can incorporate it into the ordinance and so we can incorporate it into the sign plan.
The first thing we addressed was from 20th and 21st.
Correct.
On Waterway. My belief was, no, we don't need signs there.
So that would not be in.
No.
Right.
But I would say we don't need signs probably.
All the way past where what I'm referring to.
Up until, yeah.
Let's revisit it. I mean, we have
For
time
no
to-
trailers.
Oh, do you have what you need, Linda?
So I need a motion so that you guys are giving us clear direction where on Waterway you want the no trailer parking signs to start and stop.
Linda, if I may ask, because I don't know the answer to this, where does the golf course berm end? Right, I mean, at what street roughly, if I'm, you know, heading off the island?
Probably
It's 30-something.
Is it Forest Trail?
Let's, maybe ask the chief, maybe to.
I don't golf.
We are.
No, I'm talking about Waterway Boulevard
I don't know why we-
and right away in between the road and the sidewalk. Are there other areas?
It's right past Duck Lane.
Yeah.
Basically Duck Lane.
It goes up, but I think we should go a little farther. 32nd would probably be
that's
maybe
really
a little
far.
too far.
Yeah.
But there's a lot.
What do we have right there?
Forest Trail.
Forest
Forest
Trail.
Forest Trail.
Forest Trail, Oakview, right in there.
Then
No, they
Timber.
don't go past Forest Trail.
We're waiting on DOT anyway, right?
Right.
So why
No,
don't,
no. This is the problem. We cannot submit this to SCDOT until I get the information on it that needs to be on it, which also gets translated to changes to the ordinance. So what Desiree and I are needing from you all tonight is clarity on what you want to do in the form of a motion, on what you want to do to the end of 41st Avenue and what you would like to do related to, and I think I heard, but there wasn't a motion, the section of Waterway between 20th and 21st. But if you want to cut it off sooner, then that answers the question about 20th or 21st. But we just need motions so that we can incorporate it into
I'd
the
like to make a
ordinance.
motion to cut it off sooner at the logical point. I don't know if it's 30th or
Forest Trail.
32nd.
Forest
but
Trail.
Forest at Forest Trail, and we focus on the problem we're trying to solve.
And can I just make?
Yes, ma'am,
And I
please.
just,
Wait, you got a motion?
Second. Yeah, motion a second. Okay, now
I
discussion.
just hope that we go with the less is more where signs are concerned.
I think we just
Is
did
a
that.
philosophy. Because I just,
Yes.
you know, I mean,
Yeah.
to see all those stacked on the last one, just, kind of, it is painful.
I think they just did that pretty
Okay.
well.
Thank you.
So we have a motion, a second. Any more discussion?
I do. I mean, I
Yes,
still
sir.
I still think we should have resident parking only on Waterway, along that side street from 41st Avenue up to maybe not quite to Duck Lane, but where we've already seen the impact from this.
It is.
This pending ordinance doctrine where people can't park, and now residents are getting turned away because the parking lots are full, and we're hearing from it. And I think we need to look at that, and if, like I said, we threw the baby out with the bathwater, we're making nobody be able to park there, and I think we still need to be able to focus on, if it still becomes a problem with just residents parking there, then we'll address it then. Like I said,
Aren't we doing that?
residents
No.
with trailers, that's what I'm saying.
It's not.
On what, on Waterway?
On Waterway, there's no room.
So,
The problem is the room.
Yeah, there's no
It's the
room.
room. It's
They're either
the
on the road
sidewalk,
or on the
between
sidewalk.
and the road. It's-
you have to have all four wheels off the road, and they cannot be on the sidewalk.
And you cannot block public
And you
access.
can't
Right.
block the sidewalk.
And you can't.
Good Lord, you can do that anywhere on the island. I mean, we have parking everywhere, and you have this bee in your bonnet about this one section of Waterway. So I don't understand why. I mean, there's problems like that up in the northern end, up in 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th Avenue on the side streets where people are parking right on the road, right side of the road. But there's not a problem with it. We're eliminating residential trailer parking.
Right, and adding residential trailer
41st.
parking. Much more
We've
residential
always had parking there.
But just residents though, on 41st, not
Correct.
everybody.
Right, that's what I'm
So now
saying.
they
But
got
we've always
residents.
had trailer parking there, is the thing.
But this would reserve it
Not for
for
residents.
residents,
So-
so that
I understand.
non-residents
So let's-
won't be taking that space.
Okay, so any more discussion? Hearing none. Okay, so we have a motion on the table from 41st to Forest Trail. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, but I have a clarification though. Is that to limit the scope of what we're doing to that area, or limit the signage alone?
It's the scope. Says no trailer parking's in that area. We have to space
have
the
to put
sign
signs otherwise.
according
Okay.
to the traffic engineer's recommendation.
All right.
Otherwise, DOT's not going to approve.
Okay. No more discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
No.
One?
Two.
And then we need to get
Okay.
41st clarified.
41st Avenue.
I'll make a motion that we extend the prior motion that was Frank Satilli to Waterway all the way to the end of the 41st, facing the intercoastal, so it's really to the marina property line.
Which is resident parking with
Resident
trailers.
parking, cars or trailers, resident only.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Passes.
So now we need a motion to defer.
Now, yes, thank you. Now we need,
I'll second.
any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Nays? Okay, thank y'all. That was a tough one, and, oh, my. Okay, second reading, ordinance 2018-6. This has to do with our raising revenue. Administrator Tucker did a great job in the presentation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussions. Now, on this, we probably need an amendment to include the items that we discussed earlier on this other page.
I'll make that amendment.
Second.
Second. Okay, any discussions on that?
I have one thing about the number 4, the reduced budget for dune walkovers by 50%. I think this also applies to beach access paths. I recognize that there's still money in the budget for that, but I just want to make sure that we are focusing on trying to looking at ways to make those paths accessible even when we have a lot of rain or tropical activity, and that we're not in a situation, if possible, like last year where we had most of our beach access paths unable to get over,
If I can
get
address
across.
that. We're well aware of that, well aware of that. This is a very painful budget. The most painful I've been through in the last 6 years.
And we work real hard.
we worked real hard. We didn't want to cut it at all. But, you know, there was just it was just, the deficit was just from other funds. The general fund is balanced, which is required by law every year, but the other funds were just smacking them so hard, we just had to stop the bleeding.
And I appreciate that. I
So
just
we're
want,
doing half of it.
yeah.
I think it's going to be our toughest year. Next year is going to be better, hopefully.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we're voting on the amendment to the original motion, which is this page here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none. On the original motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
And I know you mean to waive the reading.
Waive the reading, yes, please. Thank you. I don't want to read that whole thing.
Of course.
Of course. Waiving.
Obvious.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
And nays? Thank y'all. Second reading, ordinance 2018-7. This has to do with parking in the no loading zone, increasing the fines to $100, having the ability for immobilization and impoundment. Do I hear a motion?
I move.
Second. Do we have any
I
discussion?
have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Does this mean now we're going to have to be purchasing boots and things like that for the police?
We already own them.
You do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we've just never, okay.
Okay.
Means now we can use them.
Waive the reading?
Yes.
Okay, so all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays? Motion passes. D, second reading ordinance 2018-08. An ordinance authorizing the city administrator of the city of Isle Palms to execute necessary documents to enter into a third amendment to the commercial lease agreement between the city of Isle Palms and Barrier Island LLC. And the attachment is in there. I'm going to waive the reading.
What is this?
I make that as a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none. All, they say aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, thank you. Introduction of new bills, resolution, proclamations. First reading only, by title only. Ordinance 2018-09, an ordinance amending Title 5, Planning and Development, Chapter 4, Zoning 1. General Provisions, Section 5416, temporary uses of the City of Isle Palms Code of Ordinances to allow public parking on lots located in SR1, SR2, LC, GC1 zoning districts as a temporary use subject to certain conditions.
I make that motion to approve. Well,
That's only,
no, excuse me, I'm sorry.
okay.
Yeah, you're passing first
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
There is no.
Yes, sir. A little bit.
There is no. It's title
Oh,
only.
yeah, title only.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We gotta vote on
You
it.
got to vote.
All those in favor say,
Can we get a little bit of
Yeah.
background
What
on
is
what
this?
this
No, it's
is?
title only.
It's title only. I'll be glad to send you an email communication after.
yeah, this is getting started. Miscellaneous business.
We gotta vote on it.
I thought we, oh.
Yeah.
It's getting long.
I know
All
it
those
is.
in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Hearing none, passes.
No, you're okay.
Miscellaneous business. Consideration of a memorandum of understanding between the city and the Isle Palms Water and Sewer Commission to fund one half of the expense related to updating the Isle Palms Water and Sewer Master Plan for the island. This is for professional services. Everybody got a copy of the, and the total cost is $38,600. Our side would be $19,300. Waive the reading and, yes, ma'am. Wait a minute. Make that as a motion so we can discuss.
Second.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
So I just think this is wonderful and a great start. My only concern was in reading this, everything was totally focused on meeting with the IOP Water and Sewer Commission, and it never ever mentions that they will ever meet with city council or report anything to council. So I just
And the
would
planning.
hope that
It
would
does say
get,
we get the work product too, so.
right, but all the meetings, everything is commission, which is but I think we need to be included as it moves along as well.
The contract would be directly with the Water and Sewer Commission and Thomas and Hutton, so the city's not really a party to that agreement. So the work relationship is really between those two entities.
But
And then we get the resulting product. But I can certainly, we can pass along that.
Just to be, along the way, to get some reports, or, they have meetings scheduled, they put in here that maybe we could be invited, or something.
Well, the chairman of Public Works has been talked about, should be going to those meetings. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're absent of, there's no language that says there's a partnership between the city and the Water Commission, even to the point that we reimburse what they pay to Thomas and Hutton. And there hasn't been a real good relationship between information sharing between the two. And I thought that's what this memorandum was going to do, to make a partnership. Now, I understand that you can't have a contract maybe with two entities or whatever, and that might be the reason for this. But the other part about it is that I thought I heard that the Planning Commission was going to be involved in all of this, and there is no mention of Planning Commission at all.
I'll address that. We kind of hit like an expedited time frame for this particular work product. So I just got this information from the attorney for the Water and Sewer Commission on Thursday afternoon last week. He said the Isle of Palms Water and Sewer Commission is ready to sign that proposal with Thomas and Hutton tomorrow if the city is willing to pay its half. And there was so much momentum that we thought we might as well bring it to you all now, and just go ahead and get this work completed, because it sounded like everybody was ready to move forward as quickly as possible with this first step in the process, knowing that the attorney for the Water and Sewer Commission is also waiting on city administrator and any other comments that need to come through for a second memorandum of understanding, which would be for the greater project kind of after this first step. So we thought if we want to get this first step done, we can go ahead and do a very simple MOU now, just for the purposes of the Thomas and Hutton proposal, and get this underway, and they can go ahead and get that work started. Meanwhile, we'll be working on all of the other components that would then go back to the Planning Commission. Now, if you all want to, take some more time to look at all of this and have it go to the various committees, that's okay too. But this just was to give you all the option to go ahead, because we can shoot all the hot and we have it ready. So.
I just think we need some guarantees in terms of even the contract with Thomas and Hutton, that there will be representation of the city in all of those meetings.
Or even if we get an update after the task.
Yeah. Now we get the final product, it says.
I'm saying after the tasks have been completed, at a certain point, and tasks have been completed, after each task, there's a fee, and theoretically, we've paid half of that fee.
So do we want to amend this
and just have them update us on what the task,
right,
or at some point.
So we're in the loop.
You could approve the memorandum of understanding with those amendments to be made between the attorneys, and then if we can't come to an agreement, then it'll come back.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Comment?
Yes, sir.
I've been the one that recommended getting together with the Water and Sewer Authority and having a memorandum of understanding. My intent was that we would have a much larger, all-inclusive document, as you've pointed out. Once we start down this road, and I appreciate the effort to expedite some positive activity, but once we start down this road, we're kind of linked at the hip without any real hard and fast provisions that tie us together. I would suggest that we use some language, and the simplest language would be that if we agree to this, this is our work product as well. So we get the information. It needs to be specified and clear. It's our work product. It's their work product. It's our work product. More importantly, I would be motivated to support this if we included a provision that within 30 days they negotiate with the city to accommodate temporary parking for Marina employees. Now, that request, gentlemen.
All right, let's.
No, wait a second. You've got a couple opportunities for leverage. You have to come back to us for financing if you do a program. You're talking about entering into an agreement now. Where's the best faith effort here to address this issue? It's inexcusable that we've gone on for a season and a half, and this has not been given serious consideration. So you want to help with Marina, you want to help the citizens with parking, there's your opportunity. I wouldn't, under normal circumstances, want to cloud it, but it is an opportunity that my colleagues should consider. And I would hope the Water and Sewer Authority consider.
Okay, so is this going to be a motion, amendment to the motion?
So moved.
We already have.
Oh, we already have an amendment.
Right.
You have another one.
All right, let's back up and see what we got.
So now we're amending?
Yes, ma'am, we need to back up and see what we got.
Yeah, let's slow down a little bit.
We've got the original motion.
Correct.
And then the amendment is?
For the attorneys
For the
to
attorney.
work out some of these
Correct.
specifications, yes.
And updates and be included in the meetings.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so, and now, help me this, on clarification, do we do
Yes.
another amendment and then we go from the third to the second to the first? Because I want to make sure we do this,
You can do one more amendment. So you can do one more amendment to that amendment.
and we're going to clarify each time we vote to make sure we're all on the same page. I hate to say it that way, but it does get convoluted. So,
For discussion, I still have, I understand that we could do parking over there, but I mean, if it were, I just don't know what the, the liability of people parking in a water treatment plant area. I'm not sure how it would be, how it would be set up, or parking, ingress, egress. If it were me and I owned a business and I wanted somebody else to, I would be held responsible for any injury or damage or anything like that. So I don't know if there's any other type of discussion that we can have with the water and sewer department prior to this, or?
Well, there's a whole series.
maybe we should,
You hold them harmless, you set up a discrete.
Well, none of that's
area.
been spoken about. You just made the motion to go ahead and move forward with it, and none of it's been taken care of.
And that's to be addressed in the further details of the memorandum of understanding. That's why you have a memorandum of understanding. 30 days, 60 days, whatever you want, they work out the details to make this happen.
maybe we should back up and put this on the table and re-evaluate the whole process and memorandum before going forward. Because I think there's too much being put on this.
Too confusing.
Too confusing.
Why not?
And have communication between the water and sewer and the city.
Why not vote any amendments?
Which one?
Well, you've got only one right now.
Okay.
I'm prepared to offer a second. And your direction, just like we gave Sterling, is that they work out these details of which place they'll come back to us and say, here's what we can agree on with regards to a memorandum of understanding, which is the intent with our partners. That way, we're just not deferring everything, we're giving the staff a task to go ahead and develop something further for us.
I'm looking at Sterling. So we're going to amendment, a second, and a third amendment. Well, it's actually two, yes.
Some discussion on the parking. So last year when I was on real property, we did investigate this, and one of the issues is there's no lighting. There's a lot of things that would need to happen with a lot of expense to make it doable according to IOP Water and Sewer. So I don't think it's just 1, 2, 3 make it happen. I think that, and I think there was an effort and there was a lot of
We had it in the budget even.
right. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of intent on trying to make it happen, and there were a lot of problems with Homeland Security. I mean, there were all kinds of things that came into play.
And this forces the issue to have a real product. Homeland Security, you get approvals and investigations for the staff that's using the facility. Lighting, we have talked about earlier, we've got $475,000 of a potential grant with SCE&G for lighting. There's your lighting opportunity. I mean, let's name the issues, get into the details, look to resolve the problem, not reasons you can't do it.
Okay, thank you.
Just one other comment. For what it's worth, the mayor and myself do have a meeting with them on Thursday.
Okay.
So we are continuing to meet and discuss. So all of this we agree with. I don't disagree with Councilman Kinghorn on this either. It's an opportunity to look holistically at everything. What I get troubled by is we leap to the back end of the process that we've got to do lighting and who's going to pay for all of this before we solve the front end. Can we even do it? Right? Payment is secondary to can we do it, right? So I think the focus for us should be on identifying all those obstacles. Is Homeland Security really an obstacle? Is lighting really an obstacle? When you understand all that, you can work with the marina as well. How are we going to pay for this, right? And the answer may be we can't. But I've tried to keep this focus on the front end. You know, can we do this? And what are the barriers to allowing us to do it, that are physical barriers, rather than worrying about all the payments and all the other stuff?
So let me offer an amendment. The amendment is that we enter into, include in this memorandum of understanding, we enter into a good faith negotiation with the Water and Sewer Authority to implement, let's call it a pilot program with employees at the marina to park there. It's not binding. It's a good faith effort.
I'll
Go and
second it.
negotiate. Now you've got some support if council supports this. This is important to us. Let's move forward.
I think that's what they're doing on Thursday, aren't you? I mean, you're not going to play
You
dominoes.
don't have any teeth unless you include it in the document.
That's true.
Okay, this is the second amendment, and we have a second.
I want to offer one other thing to the comment, in fairness to the rest of the council. We had a rejection letter of the proposal from Water and Sewer saying we can't do this because of future planned expansion. Right? My concern was when, right? You know, if that planned expansion's not happening this year, next year, the year after, why are we using that as the reason to not be able to use the property in the interim to do this, right? So I do agree with you, right? Let's have a real conversation holistically about the problems we're trying to solve for the whole island and not piecemeal it, right? So I do support what you're saying.
Okay.
May I make just a
Yes,
couple-
ma'am, please.
Okay, so I hear where this is going, and this probably will not make any difference, but I feel compelled to just say that, you know, after all of my years with the city, not just as a city administrator, but as being a citizen of this city, this is what happens every time we start trying to work with the Isle of Palms Water and Sewer. One side or the other puts an obstacle in the way, and then we never have any success. So one thing that I think you should all just think about is that sewer was one of the big subjects that we made good progress on in agreeing to a memorandum of understanding. I feel like this is the Isle of Palms Water and Sewer reaching out and saying, okay, we're ready to move now to get the data that we need in order to make first steps in the direction that you all want us to go with this memorandum of understanding. I felt like, this is just my reaction to it as someone who's watched this for more than 40 years, that this was, to me, a monumental step on their part to say, we would like to give you what you want. This is an opportunity to do that. We're ready to spend some money to get the financial data that we need, but we need for you guys to partner with us on the expense. It's not the full MOU. It is not everything that you all want, including parking at the marina site, but I could be a fly on the wall at the Isle of Palms Water and Sewer when they get word of all this discussion tonight, where they're going to go, you see, every time we try to work with them, they say we're hard to work with. They, you know, there's money in the budget to start this process, and there's money in the budget that you guys just passed to complete this process by going ahead with partnering with them on this expense to get the data that you need, which is the first step. It's the first thing that the Planning Commission is going to need. So I think all of the things that you're advocating doing can still be done, but I fear that if you complicate this little MOU with much more than just, you know, trying to verify that we're going to be able to participate in meetings and get the data and get the work product, I think we're just going to end up, I think what you will be doing is getting right back to the stall that you've had. And if that's the goal, then, I think that's what you will achieve, is just a stall. So,
Thank you for your
soapbox.
I appreciate your comments and your history, and I value that. We're only adding one thing, and that there's a good faith effort to have a discussion.
Non-binding.
Two things.
The others are administrative.
We're doing it anyway.
They're not a roadblock. I had requested the MOU. I think we should have been in the past working more closely with the Water and Sewer Authority. I think we should do that in the future. I don't look at it as a roadblock, but an opportunity.
Okay. On the Second Amendment about parking to the marina, all those in favor to the second...
May I make one more comment before you call?
Yes, sir.
We are doing this. I think the discussion is, and I don't think when this was brought up, the rest of the council understood. We have a meeting on this subject separately, right? I don't disagree with Councilman Kinghorn, and his intention was non-binding good faith effort. We are making a non-binding good faith effort, I think. I hope the heads are nodding this way. And we're not moving forward with passing this thing in its entirety anyway.
Right.
Why don't we wait and understand what the conclusion of Thursday's meeting is and how we walk out of that meeting before we worry about this piece of it right now? Because I'm hoping that we're making good faith effort this week.
Right. Okay, so are you withdrawing it or are we voting on it?
Voting.
Okay. All those for including parking in the marina for employees. All those in favor of adding that to the original amendment, say aye. Raise your arm, please.
Please.
So now you have another item.
All right,
on your
all
agenda.
those against, raise your arm, nays. Okay.
I don't want it.
Now to the First Amendment, working together with the city on back and forth together. All of those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? Hearing none. Now for the original Memorandum of Understanding. I had to write it down. It was getting complicated. All those indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you. Whew. Okay, we've already said twice a week garbage collection begins on June 4th. Weekly recycling begins on June 13th. Our next meeting is 6 p.m. Tuesday, June 26th in council chambers.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Can I lay back now?